So this is great, and you had made a comment before we started that a lot of people are saying this is like today, like this is no different than today. So I'm very curious as to why, Mike, you chose this film to get restored.
Okay.
All right, and we'll start with it. Go ahead.
Let me say one thing. The script, I directed the movie, I did not write the script. This idea is not my idea. I interpreted somebody else's idea. The writer was Sam Vance. Sam Vance was black fighter that came back from Vietnam. He was a producer. And this was after he came back from Vietnam, I don't know where he was born, but I know that he traveled through the South after he came back from Vietnam. And whatever he saw, I didn't have enough chance to talk with him about the details, how he wrote the script. But this was his kind of interpretation and fantasy at the same time, the way he wanted this country to be. So you see it in the ending. This was his feeling, that's what he wanted. My job was to be true to his vision. So we were talking about the script here and there. I don't know much about his history. But, of course, it's a fantasy. You can see that this is a fantasy that was in his brain, in his mind, that he saw the suffering. It was in the 80s. He wrote the script 10 years before we were filming. So in the 70s, but it was his memories from the 60s, when he was probably a teenager, when he witnessed the South in the 60s. So that's what we saw here. Why did you choose this movie for restoration? And I told you the movie was lost. After it was produced and initial distribution, it fizzled out, all the copies, and they were kind of disappeared.
Yeah, basically, yeah. So, and again, this screening is dedicated to the memory of Steve James, who passed away in 1993 at the age of 41. So this is only one of two starring roles. He was sidekick in American Ninja movies and Avenging Force. We have copies for people who collect physical media and want signed copies. We have copies of some of Sam's older work here. And memory of Sam Vance, and I wish Val.
Yeah, he passed away a year ago. The writer, Sam Vance.
Yeah, but
when we found the copy, and Mike.
Yeah, it's a very interesting story. So I have a YouTube channel. I don't know if people know Real Black TV on YouTube. We have over 1.5 million subscribers. If you haven't subscribed, please subscribe today to both 1 and 2. And what happened was my partner in the channel, Charles Woods, had VHS copies in his collection. Not just one copy, but every time he seemed to find a copy, he would pick it up. It was such a special movie to him. And I was like, well, wait, why do you have like 8 copies of Riverbend? We had one when I worked at Video Library, and he's like, you gotta see it, right? So we put it on the channel. And I must preface that by saying, I think I know a lot about movies. I think there's only this movie and Spook Who Sat by the Door that show this type of agency given to black protagonists in American cinema.
Movie screens?
Yeah, Spook Who Sat by the Door. If you don't know Spook Who Sat by the Door, please look into that one. It's about empowerment. Our channel's about empowerment. We put it up on YouTube, and about maybe 6 months later, Sam wrote me an email, right? And he said, I'm the director of the film. So I'm expecting, like, oh, this is going to be cease and desist. Please take this down. But no, he said, no, you're doing this film a great service because this was independently made film, independently financed, and it's virtually been unseen since its VHS release. So I said, wow, and I'm always interested in the stories behind, and we'll get into some of those today, about behind the making of films. So we set up a Zoom. This was during the pandemic, and we talked to Sam for a few hours about making the film. And we're in the process of editing it, and 2 things happened. One, Retro Themed Radio released a documentary the making of Riverbend, right? So it's something I have to do. They made a making of Riverbend documentary, and then a copy, 35 millimeter print of the film showed up on eBay, right? So at the time I said, well, I don't know what to do with this, but I'll put in a bid, and I was the only bidder. I won. And then it sat in a box in my office for about a year and a half. And then I said, well, let's find out what's on this thing. Because by that point the documentary had come out, and people were, and Christian had said, well, a print was found in South Africa. So I said, okay, now we got to see what's on it. And that's what brings us to today. Restoring the print. And then when we revealed, we did a premiere in Denton, Texas, which is close to where the film was shot. And in the process, we reacquainted ourselves with Valerie Vance, who we, of course, can't be here today, who's one of the co-producer of the film. And she said, I have a print of the film that I've not shown since 1990. And so now we're talking with the Vance, Valerie specifically, and Marcus, who played the young Marcus in the film, to access their copy and retransfer. So anything that you do in terms of making a donation, buying a poster, buying a DVD, that'll help us get the next wave of restoration done.
Now, what Mike had not mentioned, that the VHS cassette that came out at the time, in the 80s, is of a very poor quality. So if you take I have a copy, Mike has a copy.
Well, you saw parts of the VHS.
And you saw part of it because we didn't have it. So it was, to begin with, it was in a bad quality, not a very good quality. What Mike did, he did the transfer. What Mike didn't tell you, the print that he found, sadly enough, were missing few scenes. You saw the disclaimer at the beginning. So you saw the difference, when they are singing in the church, which is a poor quality. Now we found another print that maybe is a complete print. So Mike wants to
so we want to
transfer it.
We want to retransfer it and make it better.
Um,
And shout out to Craig Rogers at Deaf Crocodile, who did the restoration. He took a lot of scratches and dirt out of the print.
Now I will relate to your question. Why do I feel that this movie is more relevant than in the 80s? There was the 60s civil rights movement and all this energy of civil rights and so on. The 80s were, and by the 80s the Vietnam War was over, and everything was pretty quiet, if you remember the 80s. And we were very optimistic. In the 80s we believed, okay, we have done it, we are moving forward very good, in a very good way, in a racial relationship in the United States. Nowadays, I don't have to tell you what have happened, especially since George Floyd and Black Lives Matter and Me Too and all of this. And suddenly, and I haven't seen this movie for 15 years as well. Why would I watch this poor cassette? And then I saw it in Texas 2 months ago with this brilliant color and everything. And I said, wow, this movie is kind of relevant to what's happening today. In a symbolic way, of course, because it's a fantasy, this movie is.
Well, just to take, from the audience, does it still work for you guys? It's relevant.
That's great.
Yeah.
Very relevant.
Yeah, so we want more people to see it, and I'm sorry, I need to cut you off.
Yeah,
I'm open
to answer your question about the relevant. We are here to really answer your question.
Yeah.
If you have any question concerning this movie.
I just wanted to ask what the process is of restoring like a tape. Like, how do you go about doing
What
it?
the process of restoration?
Yeah.
Well, the first, actually, we transferred the film reels. There's 5 reels of film.
The old ways of, she's very young, the old way were 5 reels of film with 2 heavy boxes that they used to run through a projector, and that's what he's talking about.
We took it to a place called Cine, it's at the beginning of the thing. They're very close to Boston. Cine, I want to say Cine Tel, but that's not it. So
Cinephile?
Cine 5. Cine
Is it Cinephile?
Cine 5, thank you.
Out of New York?
No, here in Boston,
Bedford, yeah.
Bedford, Mass. So they had, they were highly recommended, so I sent the film to them with a hard drive. They send back everything. Then you take the hard drive and you send it to restoration specialists. In our case, it's Deaf Crocodile Films, Craig Rogers, and he has software that can take those digital files and remove the dirt and scratches. And this was a very, you saw it before.
So basically the process of, I know many people are not technical, basically the process of transferring real film into becoming video is like scanning a slide. But you can imagine, 1.5 hours of slides.
Yeah, they do
So it's each frame, it's a process.
Right, and then each
And they
frame
scan
is
it
cleaned
into
up.
a digital high definition.
Yeah, and they were able to use the software. They can look at the frame before and the frame after and figure out what information's missing and fill it in. And it's seamless. It's night and day. There's a restoration demo on my YouTube channel. So
Once Michael got it back, it turns out that this print was scratched. If prints in the old days used to run through cheap projection machines, they scratched the film. So this movie was full of scratches, and you saw few scratches were still there.
yeah.
So there came a process of removing the scratches electronically, something like that,
Yeah, and
and popping up the colors.
yeah,
The print was faded.
yeah.
It
That's
was like a pinkish. Everything was pink.
yeah. So we color corrected in post, and sound work still needs to be done. I saw hand.
I just thank you so much for your dedication to your inspiration. It doesn't have to be, we always consider what everybody else would want to see, but it's so good to see somebody's passion. When you really are passionate about something, it's so rich. I have a question for you. You said you filmed this movie, how many years ago?
It's 30.
The film was shot in 1988.
And where was it shot?
Okay, the story is in Georgia, supposedly in the South, deep South. The money was Texan money. A person, actually it's not a person, it's the guy who comes at the end and shakes hands. He was the guy who put the money. He was an amateur actor.
Troy Dale.
His name is Troy Dale. He was in the construction business, he had enough money, not a lot of money. And he met Sam Vance, which I mentioned before, that had the script, and I don't know what was the relation between them. He decided to finance this movie. It was the dream of Sam, of the writer.
Right.
Did you
And-
have any pushback back then? Because that was, back in that time, and producing this type of movie, did you
Right.
get pushback?
No, so I will tell you. So he had one request, because he was Texan, that the movie would be shot in Texas, will be filmed in Texas and not Deep South. And this was his request because he was Texan, he still is, he's still alive. And so we shot this movie in Waxahachie, Texas. It's not far, not far from Dallas. It's south of Dallas. DeSoto, Waxahachie. This little town is Venice, Texas. The town that you saw, the little town. And this is the area of Waxahachie that has the look of the South. So it was easy. We found this one house, the house that she lives in, and we found it in the area of Waxahachie. So this was insistent. Now, did we have a racial tension during the filming? Not at all. Really not at all. It was the 80s, 88. Texas is South, but it's not deep South. So the people of Texas, I guess, are different in their feelings for the subject. And the interesting thing was that you saw the cast is mainly black. The crew was 100% white. And he insisted that we hire everybody from local people from Texas. I came from Los Angeles, Margaret Avery, Steve James, and even the cinematographer was Texan, was local from Dallas. We were the only people that came from Los Angeles. Steve, Mark, all the other actors are from Texas, are Texas actors. And so despite this different in, as I said, black, white, but There was harmony. I told you today, I was talking about it. It was a really nice harmony within the crew and the cast while we were making the movie. Really, not a, you take the sheriff Tony. He's a sweetheart of a man. I'm telling you, he's so gentle. He was such a gentleman, this Tony Frank.
Well, I think there might have been
Amazing.
some tension later when the community found out what the movie was really about.
Maybe they didn't know what it was about.
And when we're talking to Valerie, she felt that way. Like at the
Yes.
time, everybody's excited that they were making a film in the local community. But then I think when the bus shows up,
Well, there were awkward moments, I would say, but not really no tension. This little town, Venice, Texas, is like white town, 100%. So we told them, in the final scene, we are going to bring 300 black extras into the town, Okay, and there was a sheriff. This town had a little sheriff. He had a sense of humor, and he told me, well, he said the best thing I think I'll do, I'll pack up my sleeping bag or my pickup, and for this particular day, I'm going to leave the town. He was joking. So really, when the buses came and everybody, and it's a sunrise scene, so everybody came at night. We were waiting for the sunrise, and the entire little town came out to look at it. I guess they had never seen anything like this in their town, like 300 black person, men and women and children in the town. But there was I did not feel any tension. I must tell you the truth. It was harmony. It was really nice work.
yeah, I think Valerie also concurs to that.
So, how was the,
Oh.
I was curious, how was the reception of the film? How was the film received when it was released?
It was not received. It was not released. The story was like this. When the movie was finished, editing was finished, they added the music, the producers added the music. There was a little split. It's a little bit of a gossip thing that all the four producers, there was a split between them. Anyway, they found a company in Hollywood that was willing to distribute it. It's called Prism. And eventually they gave it to a bigger company, Paramount Home Video. So you would imagine, wow, lucky we have Paramount, but the truth was that Paramount did not want this movie to be out. I believe at the same time, if I'm not wrong, they had Mississippi Burning. And there is something in Hollywood about competing two movies. So there is a term which is called buy and bury. A company buys a movie to bury it. So that's what happened to this movie. So maybe they printed, let's say they printed 300, 400 VHS in a poor quality, and that's it. Nothing, never opened it in theatrical, nothing. There was one screening.
Yeah, the film we got came from the theatrical run.
But in South Africa, not here.
Well, no, it played Times Square.
It did in New York.
In New York, and then someplace in Florida, and then the Vances had a print that they took to Texas.
But not wide release. Was
Super small
Yeah,
release. Very.
And I saw it in the film festival at the time in Texas, South by Southwest, and that's it. We never heard about this movie again. Disappeared.
Yeah.
So it's fizzled out.
How was the experience working with sorry, one more question. Working with the actors? I'm sorry.
We have another question over there. One second. Go ahead.
I mean, I guess he has a follow-up question. I'll let you answer.
Oh, what's
I was just asking, how was your experience? Were they all actors, or were they non-actors, and how was the experience?
All the main characters that you see here are Texan actors. Good actors. You saw the sheriff, the head of the state police, the two soldiers which are acting together with Steve James. All of them are theater actors from Texas at the time, 80s. Here and there are non-actors among the extras, but the parts, the speaking parts are actors.
right?
Real actors.
Well, minor footnote. Tony is played by Julius Tennant, who is one half of Juvie Productions, which is Viola Davis and Julius Tennant, her husband's production company. So Julius went on to marry Viola Davis.
Yeah, he went to Hollywood. Okay, another question. Okay,
Oh,
we are
yeah,
listening.
we'll bring, let's
Okay, I'm sorry.
So we have time for two more questions.
Two more.
And then we're all going to Mission Bar and Grill.
Okay,
Have a
we've
long
got stuff here, we can hang out.
We are listening.
Yeah, so my question is this, so, given the history of this film, and your effort to restore it, what is the overall objective? Because as I hear all of it, I'm wondering, who has ownership rights of this film, right?
It's a very, very complex.
Yeah, because I mean, you're putting, I'm assuming.
Well,
you're
it's
looking to
basically
create-
orphan film.
Right. I know where you're going. There is a term. It's a complex legal question. The answer is very complex legal. There is something which is called orphan movies. Movies that the original owner lost the ownership, and the new owner, which was a company that was bankrupt, and the movie is hanging there somewhere legally between, nobody knows who owns this movie.
Right.
Therefore, there is no theater, commercial theater, which will be willing to show this movie if you don't show them who owns the movie. It's a very complex legal lawyer type of a question. I know what you're.
So then my question becomes, if it's an orphan film, right, and you're going to be trying to raise money to restore the film,
Mhm.
then it's like, I guess the intent, what's the,
Okay, so the end game, what the end game is
Yeah.
that what you're asking? So it's, if you Google orphan film on Wikipedia, it's a whole description of what these films are. And there's a nonprofit organization that just started during the pandemic who's helping us with this project called missingmovies.org. And they've identified over 1,500 movies that exist from the beginning of cinema that are basically not available. You can't, like, rights are tied up, or there's different reasons why these movies are not accessible to the public. So we're part of that missing movies list. And what our objective is to,
But there is a legal hope. There is a way
Yeah.
to obtain rights.
yeah, we're
And
working,
Mike is working with lawyers.
we're working with missing movies to reclaim the negative, restore it for the 21st century, and then have a physical media copy of it, a Blu-ray disc of it, so that people can see it in its best form. Beyond that becomes a very big legal loophole, but we've done our due diligence, and I am 100% confident that this movie is an orphan film, that there won't be any legal repercussions with us taking it to the next step.
But one more question. Was there or here?
Yeah, we can talk about it.
Listen,
Yeah, right here.
anyway.
Question
right here.
yes,
Yeah,
okay.
Okay, so since you directed the movie, right? Okay, so I was wondering if, since you took this script, if there was any creative direction that you took into your own hands, because you keep referring to this film as a fantasy of a black man who went through the South, but there is history that informs that the idea of revolution of the black community, like amongst the community they live in, is not a fantasy, but is actually historically informed. So I was wondering if, like, any creative direction that you took as a director kind of informs why this film kind of centers an action figure kind of like as an action movie, and opposed to like a film that would have the purpose of inspiring and being a product of the community that gets.
Right, I understand your question, and it's a good question to end up our discussion because, but I know we have to move, but I will be available to answer, and Mike, more questions if you want. But it's a good question in general about cinema, because we are in a film festival. What is the role of the director if he's not the writer? If I'm not Quinton Tarantino, yeah, Tarantino writes a script, he knows exactly what he wants to do, and he does it. What does the director do? He gets a script, and he needs to make a movie. And there is a point in making a movie where the writer passes the baton to the director. That's the nature of movie making in our world, the last 100 years. At that point, kind of, the director has to interpret the written word into images on a screen. It's two different media. This is a written word, this is kind of a book, and this is a moving images on a screen. Now, the director naturally will bring in some of his own, whatever you would say, his childhood, his beliefs, the way, his artistic point of view. If he wants to do it, if he doesn't want to do it, he will do it. It will happen. So when I took up the script, I was very excited when I read the script, very excited about it. And as you mentioned, and I saw, it is a fantasy. It's a event like this never occurred in the history.
You believe it's a fantasy, so I'm asking why you focus on this kind of like macho man figure that ultimately like gets a girl, which kind of seems like a side plot, and like why you didn't focus more on like.
Before you jump in, let me just speak a little bit about what Valerie would say if she was here. Valerie Vance, a co-producer, and Sam. They were like a very sort of early power couple. Sam Vance was helped.
He's the writer.
He was the writer and producer of the film. He helped found the minority program at Paramount Pictures. He's got credits from the early 80s on Paramount Studios work. And she was an agent, I think, for CAA. And their whole idea was to create a film that was counter-programming to the type of black movies that were being made at the time. But they also had strong beliefs in reconciliation and commercial viability, right? So I think their intention was to make something that was appealing to the masses, but also had some subversive content.
So that's why the action is there, because this was the request of the producers. They wanted a movie between social awareness movie, but they still wanted an action movie. So they were in between, so I was just loyal to the vision of the producers. I didn't come in to fight with them and say, okay, this is a stupid idea. Either this. I was trying to be loyal to the idea of the producers and to carry on whatever they wanted.
Yeah.
And then, of course, I brought in my own points here and there as interpretation.
Yeah, but their intention.
And I will answer your question, but
I just had a quick comment. It's not even a
very
question.
quick.
Go ahead, go for it.
It's just a
Go for it.
comment.
Go
Just
for
a
it.
quick comment. I really enjoyed the film. I thought it was excellent. I just wish there was a little bit more closure with that sheriff, because I would have wanted to run his ass with that Washington shit.
That's exactly what Mike, we were talking about. Some people just wanted.
Tony was,
Right.
he's a good actor, and he passed away unfortunately as well.
Yeah, not long ago he passed away. No, he was just a good actor.
No,
He's a
I'm saying-
sweetheart of a man. I told him.
Within the movie.
The sheriff.
Thank you so much. Let's just look at Cynthia Francis.
I mean, it's interesting because we were talking about this before, that
I'll give you a poster.
some people want to really like take that sheriff out. Like, get the reconciliation, we don't want reconciliation, we just want him gone and to suffer horribly. Okay,
But
we gotta.
listen, Carl, one more thing. It was very important to the writer of the movie that this movie is not about revenge, it's about justice.
Yeah.
He kept telling me all the time. He said, Sam, make sure that this movie is not about revenge, it's a movie about justice. This was his point of view of the world. That's how he wanted things to be like the ending of this movie. Thank you very, very, very much for that.